So before the break, we discussed baby animals that are born. Those are baby animals that come out of their mom's belly, right? They get their food from their mom. They need their mom because most of them are blind. They cannot see, so they really need their mom to help them and to support them. We also talked about how some moms will have what's called a pouch. Possums and kangaroos, they have pouches where their babies can live in their pouch safely until the baby's old enough to come out. So on page 54, we're going to talk about the next way that some baby animals come into the world, because some baby animals aren't born, meaning they come from their mom's belly. There's a different way that some of the baby animals come into the world. Okay, and that's by what we call hatching. Hatching, they will hatch from an egg. So some baby animals will hatch from eggs. Their mom will lay the eggs, and after they develop inside of the eggs for some time, they'll eventually come out of the egg, you know? But it's only certain animals that lay eggs where the babies hatch. Okay, like we talked about last week, whales, possums, kangaroos, mice, the elephants. These are animals, examples of animals where the baby is born. Okay, there are specific animals where the babies will hatch. Okay, so some animals will hatch from eggs, and all the eggs are different. Some of the eggs are large, some of the eggs are really small, some of them are white, some of them have different colors, some of them have like no hard shell, they're just like kind of like liquid, it looks like. But all the animals that where they have to lay an egg, it is they all do it, and the animals will eventually hatch. Once the egg, the baby develops inside of the egg for a certain amount of time, the egg will eventually hatch. So you might say, how do they hatch? Well, whenever the baby animal is inside of the egg, they will grow something called, it's a special tooth, and it's called an egg tooth. This little egg tooth that they have is what they use to crack and break through the shell. And they only have the egg tooth just when they're in the egg, so that once they come out of the egg, they lose the egg tooth because they don't need it anymore. So they'll have, as they're growing inside of the egg, their egg tooth is growing, and when it's time for them to hatch, they'll push through the egg. They will crack the shell, and I'll show you a video of that on tomorrow, what it looks like, how they hatch. But they'll push through with their egg tooth through the shell, and once they crack the shell open, they'll come out of the egg, and then eventually the egg tooth falls off because they don't need it anymore. And so that's how some animals that hatch, that's how they come out of the egg. This egg tooth helps them to crack through the shell. So let's talk about some of the animals that hatch from eggs. First, we have birds. Every type of bird will come from an egg. Every kind of bird, whether it's a robin, it's an ostrich, an owl, an eagle, a cardinal, a sparrow, a crow. It doesn't matter what kind of bird it is. All birds will lay eggs and they hatch from eggs. Chickens, all of those animals. Next, we have a lizard. All types of lizards, a gecko, an iguana, all types of lizards, they lay eggs and they hatch from eggs as well. Turtles. Turtles will lay eggs and they hatch from eggs. Snakes. They hatch from eggs. Spiders, they hatch from eggs. Alligators, frogs, all fish, they all lay eggs. The mom will lay the eggs and the baby will hatch from the eggs. These are the animals on the test that will ask you to list at least 3 animals that lay eggs, and these are the animals: birds, frogs, fish, insects, spiders, lizards, alligators, turtles, and snakes. They all lay eggs. That's how these animals come into the world. They're not born from their mom's belly. Instead, their mom will lay an egg and they will hatch from the egg. Okay, let's look at 55. So look at these animals here. Do you know what each of these animals will look like when they grow up? A chick. The chick just hatched from the egg. What will the chick grow up to be?
A chicken.
A chicken. The duckling. What will the duckling grow up to be?
A duck.
A duck. The alligator. What will it grow up to be?
An alligator.
An alligator. Same thing. Tadpole. What will it grow up to be?
A frog.
A frog. So yeah, so as you can see, a lot of the babies, when they're born, they don't look like their parents just yet. But eventually, as they're going to grow, you'll see how they'll develop and grow into their parents. One in particular we'll talk about is the tadpole. Let's look at 56. The tadpole looks totally different from a frog, right? It looks kind of like some type of like fish, right? It doesn't look so much like a frog. So we'll talk about the process that a tadpole will go through in order for it to become a frog. All right, frogs. So some animals will change very much as they grow. At first, they do not look like their parents at all, but eventually, as they start to grow and develop, then they will. So let's talk about the frog. So number one, the mother will lay the eggs. Now, frog moms can lay up to 20,000 eggs. That's a lot of eggs. But not all of those tadpoles will make it. Why? Well, because you have turtles, you have some fish that live in ponds that will eat some of the eggs. So she does lay a lot of eggs, but not all of the eggs will hatch because some of them will get eaten by some of the other animals. But there are some of the eggs that will hatch. So eventually, number two, the eggs will hatch into these tadpoles. These tadpoles have gills like fish. That's how fish breathe underwater. They breathe through their gills. And these tadpoles will breathe through their gills. That's how they will get air from the water. Then eventually the tadpole starts to grow. And then number three, the tadpole will grow hind legs, which are the back legs. That's the hopping legs that frogs use to hop. And so you can see it still looks like a fish though, just a fish with legs, right? So number four, after the back legs grow, then eventually the front legs will come out as well. And as you can see now, the body is starting to shape like a frog. It still has that tail though, but the body looks like a frog. Now it has back legs and now it has front legs. Then number five, eventually the tails will start to get shorter and shorter. And as you can see, it's starting to look more like a frog. It doesn't so much look like a tadpole anymore, and it's also getting bigger. And then number six, eventually, once the growth process is complete, the frog will hop out of the water because now the frog has lungs instead of gills, and now it can breathe on land. And that's why we'll often see frogs on land most of the time. I see frogs all the time near my house. But yes, so frogs, they will eventually hop out of the water. Now they have lungs which help them to breathe on land. So that's the process. And a lot of the animals go through that process, like chicks, right? They don't look like their moms, but as they start to get bigger and they grow, their color starts to come in, their wings start to grow a little more, they get bigger, and then eventually they'll look like an adult chicken. All animals will go through that process. Even animals, not only animals that are born, but animals that hatch as well, they go through that same process where they won't look like their mom, but as they grow, you'll see the changes they'll go through, and then eventually they'll look like the mom, the adult. Okay, so that's the process that frogs go through. They start off as tadpoles, and then eventually they grow into a frog. Okay, all right. So yeah, so that's it for science this week, talking about animals that hatch. They hatch from eggs. Their mom will lay the eggs, and when the time comes right, they'll use that egg tooth that they get. The egg tooth, they'll crack the shell with the egg tooth, they'll come out, the egg tooth will fall off, and then they'll go through their growth process. A lot of times now, we talked about with baby animals that are born, where do they get their food from again? Baby animals that are born? Their mom, right? Well, babies that hatch, they don't get milk from their mom. They will eat like worms and bugs. They'll eat things like that. That's the things that they eat. They don't drink milk because their mom does not produce milk. And also, some of them, their mom actually leaves them once she lays the eggs. So they're kind of on their own after that. Like turtles, the mom will lay the eggs and she leaves, and they're on their own after that. And so yeah, that's why they don't get milk from their mom. They'll eat like bugs and insects. That's the types of things that they eat. Okay. All right. And a lot of times, a lot of these animals will find their ponds or like in the woods and things like that. All right. Good job. All right. So that's it for our science this week on animals that hatch and the process that they go through once they hatch. Okay. Let's go ahead and get out our social studies. We'll move on to our next place, page 49. No, we did the Fort McHenry, right? Yeah. Page 50. I did it. In your social studies, page 50. All right, so we have started our tour of America. We started our first location we went to was Virginia, where we went to, not Virginia, I'm sorry, Plymouth, Massachusetts. We went to Massachusetts where we visited, where we visited Plymouth, right? What's special about Plymouth? Who were the first people to arrive in Plymouth?
The Pilgrims.
The Pilgrims, thank you. The Pilgrims, they were the first people to arrive in Plymouth, right? There's the two things we can see, Plymouth Rock, where it has the rock with the year that they landed, and then we can visit Plymouth, Plymouth Plantation, where there's houses that looks like the Pilgrim houses, and also we can see the Mayflower too. After we left Plymouth, Massachusetts, we went to New York City, up here in New York City, where we visited a beautiful waterfall. Anybody remember the name of the waterfall?
Oh,
Niagara Falls, right? Niagara Falls is between Canada and New York. There's two sides to it. You can go on the Canada side or the American side, and you can see the beautiful waterfall. It falls 190 feet high. It's 190 feet high, and that's how far it falls down. Beautiful waterfall. And we also saw the Statue of Liberty as well. And then we also went to Baltimore, Maryland. Did we go to Fort McHenry? Yeah, we did. Then we went to Maryland, where we visited Fort McHenry, right? Fort McHenry was important because whenever the War of 1812, the American War for Independence was happening, when that war was going on, that's where they fought the battle, right? And Francis Scott Key, he was captured and he watched the battle go on from the sea. And all he kept looking for was to make sure what was still up in the air, the what? The flag, right? And it inspired him to write the song called the StarSpangled Banner. He wrote that beautiful song, right, to show, to talk about what happened during the battle. And it's also the national anthem. They play it before usually every game that goes on in America, basketball game, football game, baseball. They play and sing that song. And so, Francis Scott Key wrote the national anthem. And I don't think we had listened to it. I think I had showed you pictures of some things, but I don't think we had listened to. No, we didn't even look at pictures. So I'll show you pictures. Now, I don't know why we didn't. I don't think we had met that day. I don't know. So I'll take time to. You gonna talk to me while I'm trying to do this lesson? Okay. So yeah, let me go ahead and find the pictures for you. Huh? 87? You're asking me? All right, so here are some extra pictures of Niagara Falls. So this is the beautiful waterfall. Can you see it, Asa? So yeah, so there's actually a boat ride you can take. As you can see, there's a boat and you can get very close to it.
If you get closer, it's like dangerous in this country. It's like dangerous. It looks.
All right, and here's another picture of it here. Oh, not that.
Oh, that was so cool. I see that again. That was.
There's just another picture of it. You can see beautiful. It's kind of blurry, but yeah. All right, and this one is pretty. They lit it up, as you can see here. And there's another picture, a beautiful picture of it. And this is it in the winter. As you can see, it's frozen. It's ice. That's how it is probably right now because it's in Buffalo, New York. And it actually had a bad snowstorm in Buffalo a couple of weeks ago. But yeah. That's from my paper, I think. Okay, so I think that's it. Yeah, okay, so I'm going to show you some pictures of Williamsburg.
Williamsburg,
Virginia, where we went. We talked about Williamsburg. That's what colonial life looks like. So here's a picture of like a colonial house in Williamsburg. So their homes are built a lot different than what we normally see today. This is Williamsburg.
That's how it looks like a normal house.
Okay, you can see horse carriages there, as you can see here.
Oh, that's not.
No, it's not. No, it's not. Here's another house.
A festival. That looks like a school. Yeah.
And then this is what the people dress like in Williamsburg. So totally different. Yep. And here's Fort McHenry. And so this is a closer picture of the one that we had saw in our book. As you can see, so when the battle was going on, Francis Scott Key was on a boat in the water. So he was watching from the water. And as you can see, that's where the flag is right there. So he was hoping that flag was still there. Here's a closer picture. Hold on, why is it doing that?
Hi. Oh, the flag is going down. It looked like it's on.
There's a closer picture of Fort McHenry. This is how you get inside Fort McHenry.
It looks like it's going down. They a little bit.
Another picture of the cannons they used at Fort McHenry for the battle. And that's another picture of one of the walls of Fort McHenry. That's that flag that Francis Scott Key was looking for. Okay.
I just see a big.
All right. So that is that's what Fort McHenry looks like. And I'll play the national anthem since we didn't get a chance to listen to it. I'll play it so that you can hear it and maybe sing along. On page 67.
I'm going right to 67.
So 67, I'll play the song and you can hear it.
Be quiet, be quiet.
Okay, shh, so you can hear it. Can you hear Asa?
Not really.
What about now?
Kind of.
Look at the lyrics. Yep. All right. So that's the Star-Spangled Banner. That's the song that Francis Scott Key wrote. All right. Moving on. Let's go ahead and go on to. Oh, we didn't visit Williamsburg yet. We're visiting that today. My bad. Okay. Page 50. Let's visit our next country. So our next city. This is actually not a state or anything. It's a city, and it's actually the capital city of America. So every state has what's called a capital city, which is their most important city, right? And here in America, we have a capital city for our country, and that capital city is Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. Okay? So we'll talk about Washington, D.C. Who do you think that city's named after? Washington, D.C. George Washington, obviously, right?
I was going to say that.
Yep, George Washington. All right, so in Washington, D.C., yes, it is an historical city because there are a lot of historical things that we can see there. And like I said, it's the nation's capital city. Washington, D.C., like I said, it's not necessarily a state. It is actually like a little piece. It's like really small. It's between Virginia and it's between Virginia and Maryland. I can think of the name. Maryland. It's between Virginia and Maryland. So if you're in DC, you can kind of be near both of those places, right? All right. So let's talk about all the things we can see in Washington, D.C. So first thing in the red, we can see the Lincoln Memorial. So Lincoln Memorial, who do you think that is built for? Abraham Lincoln. So the Lincoln Memorial honors Abraham Lincoln. A line down the middle. A line down the middle. Okay, so Abraham Lincoln has a memorial in DC where you can go, and if you go inside of it, he's sitting on like a chair, and on the walls they have like his speeches he wrote. It's very nice, and so that's the Lincoln Memorial in DC. You can go there and see the beautiful Lincoln Memorial. We can also visit, if you look to the right, the Washington Monument. It's one of the tallest monuments in the world. So the Washington Monument obviously honors George Washington. So that's another building we can see there. Next, we can go to the White House. Does anyone know who lives in the White House? The president. So we can visit the White House, which is where the president will live, and he works there as well. The White House.
That's his house?
Okay. Every president except George Washington lived there. It was built after George Washington was president, but every president after George Washington has lived inside of the White House. And we'll talk about the White House more. I'll show you more pictures of it tomorrow, like all the rooms and all of that. Okay. Next, we have to the right, which is called the Capitol. So when they make laws in America, that's where they send the laws, to the Capitol. The Capitol is a building on Capitol Hill, and it's near Washington, D.C., and that's where they make all of the laws in the Capitol. So when they make laws where you can't do this, you can't do that, they set those laws in the Capitol. All the congressmen and senators, all of those people, they meet in the Capitol, and they decide and vote on if they want to pass a law or they want to deny a law. Washington, D.C. is also home to the world's largest library. It's called the Library of Congress. I have pictures of that. I'll show you that on tomorrow as well. And so it's a very beautiful library that you can go and you can visit. And it's very special because, like I said, it's the world's largest library. And it's the Library of Congress. It is in Washington, D.C. Also, you can see the Supreme Court building where the Supreme Court, these are like 9 people who decide on if all the laws that Congress makes in the Capitol are constitutional. The Supreme Court, you can visit the Supreme Court as well. And they have a bunch of museums you can visit in Washington, D.C. as well. Yes, so Washington, D.C. is a very historical city. Has anyone been there before? Like you visited Washington, D.C.? Yeah, I went there a few years back. Yeah.
Nope.
And so I'll show you pictures from when I went, and for you to see some of the things.
Wait, today or tomorrow?
Okay, so the Washington D.C. That's fine. Just go ahead. Washington D.C. You can see a lot of historical things there. The Lincoln Memorial, Washington Monument, the White House because that's where the president lives, the Capitol where they make laws, Library of Congress because it's the world's largest library. Cool things you can see there are a lot of memorials, the Jefferson Memorial, which honors Thomas Jefferson, and just a lot of cool things you can see in DC. That's historical to our country, America. Okay, let's move on from DC. We're going to go to Virginia, and we're going to visit Williamsburg, Virginia, which is not far.
Virginia.
I said Virginia, not Virginia with a V.
Virginia. Wait, you said you didn't say Virginia. You said Virginia. I sure don't see it. She definitely did.
Okay, so from Washington, D.C., we can go to Williamsburg. Williamsburg is a very unique city because Williamsburg was actually one of the first colonies, one of the first cities that the Pilgrims built. And it has a lot of historical buildings there as well. And actually, Williamsburg was built to look like, Williamsburg still has a lot of the buildings that was built in the 1700s. So, we know how things look now, how buildings look now, things look now, but in Williamsburg, a lot of the buildings looked a lot different. And if you go to Williamsburg, you can see what the buildings were actually like whenever the 1700s was here. You can see what a lot of those places looked like, the houses, all of that. Also, if you look at the picture on 51, you can see even how they're dressed. It's totally different from how we dress now. because that's how they dressed in the 1700s. And the people in Williamsburg, they dressed like how they dressed in the 1700s. So, it's just a unique city because it kind of takes you back to what life was like during colonial times and what they dressed like, how their houses were. They ride horse carriages in Williamsburg because they didn't have cars at that time. And they tried to make sure that you understand what life was like during that time frame. You can see a blacksmith, a bunch of colonial shops, a baker baking cookies. There's a lot of things, and I'll show you more pictures of Williamsburg. So Williamsburg actually used to be the capital city of Virginia. It's not anymore, but it was. It was a very important city, but eventually as time went on, they changed it and they gave the capital city to another city in Virginia. But Williamsburg used to be the capital of Virginia, but it's not anymore. Okay, so guys, those are our two cities. We're moving on to Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, where we can see all the memorials to the presidents, visit the museums, visit the largest library, and we can also go to Williamsburg, Virginia, where we can see what colonial life was like for the Pilgrims in the 1700s. Okay, all right, so we have, we're about to move on to the national parks, probably starting next week, where we'll see a lot of nature, a lot of things in nature. That's what we're going to move on to, okay? All right, good job with that. Our social studies and science lessons. Let's go ahead and cover our reading, and we'll be done for the day.
Our reading.
Yes? Yeah. 114 in your reading. That was yesterday's page. Today is 87. Oh.
187. 114. Oh, okay.
So yesterday we read about my mother. 5. My mother.
We did my mother. No, we didn't. We're supposed to be this my mother. Yeah, we're fun
If it's 87A, yes, you need to do your fact page. I'm not checking that. I'm a middle teacher. What? Okay, we'll just use the Lucy for now.
That's my phone. I can hear my phone all the time.
I'm not
You don't even have a phone. What did you say?
114. Fun at the street. A long neck, a giraffe. All right, 114. Fun at the stream. So let's read about Gus and his friend as they're at the stream. Let's read about what happens while they're there.
I know the last story.
All right, fun at the stream. All right, so yesterday, some people didn't read yesterday. Why did we stop yesterday?
You stopped at my phone.
Did you read yesterday? I don't think you did.
I don't have it.
All right, Braylee, come on. Okay, so much you worried about somebody else. That's fine. Come on, Braylee. You see what I'm talking about? This is what I be saying all the time. Y'all are always concerned about everybody else and what they have going on, but yet your stuff is not together. That's not good. Fun at the stream.
Let's splash in the
Turn around. You don't have a book, so you're not reading. Look this way.
I will be writing the path to the school.
Okay, so we're introduced to our characters here, Trip and Gus, right? And what are they about to have? They're about to have a what? Nope.
No.
So y'all must have not read it when she was reading it. They're gonna race. Yes, they're gonna run up the path and race one another. Okay, Cairo, book. You don't have your book? All right, Asa, 115.
Just then Trip cried, I cut my toe on a big rock. Please help me, Gus. Gus came back to help Trip. But Trip did not have a big cut. It was just a scratch.
Okay, so as they're racing up the path to the stream, what happens to Trip?
He over a rock.
No, he didn't.
He
He cut himself on a rock, right? And so who does he help? Who does he ask to help him? He says, Gus, please help me. But was it a cut or was it a scratch?
A scratch.
It was more of a scratch. Okay, 116. Micah, you'll read half of it. I say it.
Okay, what? So we're gonna stop.
Can you just read? I'm gonna tell you where to stop. Thank you.
Chip got up fast and then he ran up the path. He got the stream first. He cried. Gus had to
You
smile.
skip that.
I beat you, Gus. I beat you. Gus. Just say anything or the things that is described. Gus
I don't
had
even know what
to
to say.
smile. Let's play in the stream. And then play on the rocks. Gus said.
Okay. So whenever Gus came to check on Trip, what did Trip do?
He won.
He ran ahead and won. So do you think he really was hurt? Or was he trying to trick Gus?
Yeah.
He was maybe trying to trick him, right? Because he acted like he was hurt, so Gus would have come check on him, and then he ran ahead and he ended up winning. Okay? All right, let's keep reading on 116. 7.
He ran in the back of a big rock. I will trick Trip. He said, Trip, Gus cried, you can't see me.
Okay? So whenever Gus finally made it, he decided to hide from Trip. He was going to hide behind the rock. Let's see. 117, Elijah. Oh, you don't have a book. Okay. That's noise.
Trip came up to the stream. He did not see Gus. He went in back of the rock, but Gus went to the side. Then Trip went to the side of the rock, but Gus went to the back.
All right, so Gus Gus went to hide. He was going to trick Trip. So when Trip came up, did he see Gus hiding? No, he didn't. He's looking for him. Okay, 118, Brayley.
Are they in water? Oh my God. I cannot see you. Yes, then Trip felt good. Grab him. Here I am, Gus cried.
Okay, so could Trip find Gus?
No.
No, and then he eventually gave up, and then Gus comes out and says, here I am. Okay, 119, Asa.
It was time to go home. Then let's come back, Trip said. I like to play at the stream.
Good. So now they had a good time, they had fun, and it was time to go back home. So they had fun at the stream. I mean, at the lake, having a good time. Well, the stream. They had a good time playing hide and seek and also racing one another as well. Okay. All right. So tomorrow we'll do our last story in our book, and we'll be finished with our book on tomorrow.
Yay!
All right, guys. So that is it for our Zoom. Asa, you have a good afternoon. I will see you tomorrow morning for Bible. Bye-bye.
Bye.